Okay, this video will build off of the excerpt from the chapter on paragraphs from the Bedford Handbook that I assigned to you. There's a link to it on the announcements page. Just make sure that you read that first before watching the video. So let's start with a very broad question. Why have paragraphs at all? What is a paragraph intended to do? Well, for one, let's look at a text where we've removed all of the paragraphs. Pretty daunting. It's making my brain hurt just trying to follow that huge block of text. That's from an introduction of my dissertation, by the way. It's as dense as it looks. So one reason for paragraphs is just to make things easier on the eyes. But we also know that we don't just break up lines willy-nilly like this. That's not going to help things much at all. So how do we determine where and when to create a new paragraph? Well, for one, since a paragraph is always part of a larger piece of text, you want to make sure that your paragraph fits the overarching focus of your work. If you write an essay about the American Revolution, for example, it would be strange to have a paragraph that went on to describe your ideal breakfast. But it would also be strange if every paragraph in your essay on the American Revolution repeated the same point. Like, for instance, the soldiers' experience at Valley Forge, over and over. Even though paragraphs should link to the overarching topic, we expect that there will be something unique about each paragraph. That if there are numerous paragraphs about soldiers at Valley Forge, one might talk about soldiers who stayed, another might talk about soldiers who deserted, and another might discuss soldiers who died there. So, in brief, a paragraph should connect to the essay more broadly, but it should also have a unique point of its own to make. Now, what does the structure of a paragraph look like? Paragraphs come in all shapes and sizes, and it would be impossible to give a comprehensive description of them here. So I'm going to focus on a particular type of paragraph you are likely to write for academics' essays. That is, paragraphs that are argumentative and backed by evidence. What I'm describing is only a template, and once you get the hang of this basic structure, you can go on to alter the structure to suit your purposes. So as the Bedford Handbook points out, a paragraph should focus on a main point, but also develop the main point. These goals are usually accomplished through a three-part structure. So 1, you want a topic sentence. 2, you want an evidence. And then 3, finally, you want some analysis. Okay, we're going to look at each one of these in turn. So let's first talk about the topic sentences. Generally, and again, I want to stress that this is a general template, not a hard and fast rule. A topic sentence is the first or second sentence of a paragraph. It should connect to the essay's broader focus, and it should introduce the topic of that individual paragraph. All right, so let's look at an example. Here we have a paragraph about a cat. I'm going to read through it, and then we'll discuss how the topic sentence works. When I first brought my cat home from the Humane Society, she was a mangy, pitiful animal. She was so thin that you could count her vertebrae just by looking at her. Apparently, she was declawed by her previous owners, then abandoned or lost. Since she couldn't hunt, she nearly starved. Not only that, but she had an abscess on one hip. The vets at the Humane Society had drained it, but it was still scabby and without fur. Notice that the first sentence explains the context of this paragraph. Even though we don't know what the rest of the essay says, we can presume that it's been about a cat and possibly about getting her from the Humane Society. Also notice that the sentence introduces the focus of the specific paragraph, how pitiful and mangy the cat is. This is an example of a successful topic sentence to them because 1, it comes early in the paragraph, 2, it provides us with some context, and then 3, finally, it provides us a focus for this specific paragraph. Now, there are ways to structure your topic sentence to make clear to your reader what your topic actually is. In general, readers tend to expect that familiar, old information will come towards the beginning of a sentence and that new, unfamiliar information will come at the end. Because of this, the end of sentences tend to be where we place most of our attention and emphasis. So it is most effective to structure your topic sentence so that the connection with the essay's broader focus comes at the beginning of the sentence and that the introduction of the topic comes at the end. All right, so let's go back and look at that first sentence again. When I first brought my cat home from the Humane Society, she was a mangy, pitiful animal. Notice how when you read it, your attention is naturally focused on it being a mangy, pitiful animal. That seems like the most important part of that sentence. It seems so because the sentence has ended with that piece of information, okay? And on the other hand, it began with the contextual information that the cat was brought home from the Humane Society, okay? So again, in general, begin your topic sentences by connecting your paragraph with the essay's broader focus, and then end the sentence by introducing the topic, all right? Now, once you've introduced the main point, you need to develop it. And this usually comes from a combination of evidence and analysis. Okay? Now, evidence can come in all types: stories, descriptions, examples, scientific studies, you name it. The type of evidence you choose will depend on the type of argument you are making. But what I want to stress most about evidence right now is that it should be as specific as possible. The standard advice for writers, and this goes for academic or creative writers, is show, don't tell. What that means is that if you're trying to explain why a cat is mangy and pitiful, don't say, she looked hungry and looks like she hadn't been cared for in a long time, okay? Because that's just too vague. It doesn't give us any visual picture of what we're looking at. Instead say, she was so thin that you could count her vertebrae just by looking at her. When you describe how thin she looks, you don't need to say that she looked hungry. We can tell that already, and it is much more powerfully communicated through that visual picture that you've given us. Okay, the same even goes for scientific evidence, which might not be as descriptive. Okay, don't say, the researchers found that not sleeping at least 7 hours a night is very hard on the performance of young students, but rather say, researchers found that students who did not sleep 7 hours a night performed 20% worse on standardized tests than those who did. Okay, so that gives us more specific information. It's much more vivid, and it makes a stronger impression on the reader. Okay, and just a side note, totally made up that fact there. Okay, finally, analysis. Now, analysis simply means explaining the significance of the evidence that you've presented us. So, why does it matter? How does it relate to the overall focus of the essay? Now, sometimes the evidence you provide will be so obvious that there will be no need to analyze it further. Like the paragraph about the cat that we just looked at, where it just kind of describes what we're seeing. But generally, you will want to restate your point to the reader in a new way by the end of the paragraph. And this goes especially for argumentative academic writing. Just remember that your reader is taking all of your information in for the first time. So while it might seem obvious to you, it's going to be unfamiliar to them. So the analysis should be a chance to explain how the evidence develops the paragraph's topic and how it explains why the evidence, proves that the point that you're trying to make. So to recap, a paragraph should, 1, focus on a main point, which is done through the topic sentence, and then 2, develop the main point, which is done through a combination of evidence and analysis. Okay. Now let's look at some examples of how a paragraph introduces their topic through the topic sentence and then develops that topic through the evidence and analysis. Okay, let's take this paragraph from the ending of Amir Questlove Thompson's introduction to a Rolling Stone article on the 50 top hip-hop songs of all time. He writes, "The greatest hip-hop songs have the power to pull energy and excitement and anger and questions and self-doubt and raw emotion out of you. It could be a song that sets your neighborhood on fire, Rebel Without a Pause, or a song on your headphones that makes you rethink what hip-hop is, Ultramagnetic MC's Ego Trippin'. The common thread is change. The best hip-hop songs aren't blueprints. They are calls to action, reminders that you can start a revolution in 3 minutes. Just keep that clock radio on." So notice how direct and clear that topic sentence is. Here we have the context at the beginning, the greatest hip-hop songs of all time, so that putting us in the context of what the rest of the essay is about. And then the topic of this paragraph at the end of the sentence, the power to pull energy and excitement and anger and questions and self-doubt and raw emotion out of you. Now, if that ending seems really long, just take it as a reminder that good writing can come in all shapes and sizes, okay? So that within a general template that I'm describing here, there can be a lot of interesting variation. So the specific evidence comes in the next sentence, where it gives examples of different songs and the specific reaction you might have from listening to them. And then finally, the paragraph ends by bringing these things all together. It emphasizes how all these songs and ideas have changed as their underlying focus, and that the best hip-hop songs aren't blueprints, that they're call to actions. Okay, let's look at a different example. All right, this paragraph right here from a argumentative op-ed written in the New York Times by Judith Shulevitz about women and a universal basic income. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to pause the video, or I want you to pause the video, and I want you to read the paragraph on your own. All right, and as you do, I want you to mentally mark, first of all, how it introduces this main point. Okay, so where is its topic sentence? What is the broader context, and what is ultimately its topic? All right. Then I want you to note how it uses specific evidence to develop that main point. And then finally, I want you to note how it analyzes that evidence. So again, we're looking at this paragraph right here. Take a moment to pause the video and read it over, think about it, analyze it, and then we'll come back and see how you did. Okay, let's see what you noticed. Hopefully you identified the first sentence as the topic sentence, as is often but not always the case. All right. The context comes in the first part of the sentence, the feminist argument for a UBI. So even though we don't know the rest of the essay, we can presume that it's an argument about why a universal basic income is important for supporting women. To a reader of this essay, they will be able to see the connection a lot more clearly than we can. But the point of this specific paragraph comes at the end of the sentence. It's a way to reimburse mothers and other caregivers for all the work that they do free of charge, right? Now, there might be other reasons a universal basic income supports women, but this paragraph is going to focus just on this one particular reason. And we know that because of the way that they've structured their topic sentence to make that point clear to us, all right? They've provided the context at the beginning, and then they've focused on the topic here at the end of the sentence. All right. So how does this paragraph develop its overall point? The next couple of sentences provides the evidence. Okay. Notice how instead of saying many people have children or elderly parents to care for, the writer gives us specific numbers, making a stronger impression on us as readers. We also get in the next sentence specific examples of what types of tasks these caregivers might provide, specifically diaper changing and bedpan cleaning, right? These sorts of specifics are crucial for really helping the reader visualize what it is that you're trying to talk about and making the paragraph just more interesting and compelling to read. Without it, the reader is going to quickly lose interest, all right? Now, finally, they explain their statistics and their evidence through their analysis, and that really comes in this sentence and the rest through the end. After giving evidence for the work that caregivers do, which are, again, primarily women, they explain why that matters for an argument in favor of a universal basic income. So in other words, because caregivers are providing these labors out of love and duty, it often goes uncompensated. In fact, according to the author here, they have to provide, they have to, pay for the privilege of doing this care, because by focusing on the care, they're not out of the home earning money. All right. Now, if the writer were just to give examples of caregivers working without explaining why that might be financially difficult, we might miss the significance of that overall point, right? I, for one, hadn't fully considered how diaper changing might be an example of uncompensated labor. So without that analysis, that those examples wouldn't have made sense, or it wouldn't have been clear how that's related to a universal basic income. All right. So to recap this lesson generally, to go back to kind of the PowerPoint presentation, each paragraph should focus on a main point, something that's related to the broader essay, but that's unique to itself. All right. And again, you introduce that main point through your topic sentence. And then 2, you develop the main point through specific evidence and then analysis that clarifies the main point and explains why that evidence is significant. All right. So even though this is only a basic template for paragraphs, hopefully these principles will give you a structure to work with in your academic writing.